for those of you watching today, this segment's going to be called Hora el Mate. Obviously, I'm not with Chris right now, but mate refers to everyone usually drinks mate and we share it together. And I know Chris doesn't have one right now, but eventually we'll do another interview together and I'll get him trying some of that Argentinian tea. And for those of you that don't know, Chris Mannella is my first guest of the show. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to get people that are professionals in their industry, soccer players, athletes, obviously, artists, celebrities, writers, to talk about their struggles that they deal with throughout their craft, the struggles they deal with just in general in life, and how they overcome these struggles. Now, Chris has played professional soccer in Canada for quite a while now. Him and I have actually not shared a change room, I believe, but we have shared a pitch before. You're a really great player, center midfielder for those of you who follow sport. He's played for York 9, which is part of the new current CPL. He's played for Toronto FC. He's played in Ottawa Fury. He's had some caps at the international level with the Canadian men's national team. I believe he debuted with Iceland. So he's got quite a good trajectory, especially considering how difficult it is for Canadian players to get to the professional level. So welcome, Chris. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be your first guest. I'll definitely take it. I'll definitely have some mate with you one time. And we'll definitely make it better. But yeah, so I started off just like anyone else playing OYSL soccer. Played for Spartacus. I played for Islington Rangers. And I kind of just went through the whole system. I made my way through the provincial system from the U14 level to the U16 level. Did my 3 years there. And then once that was over, I made the decision to move on to TFC Academy. I was at TFC Academy for quite some time and then finally made the jump to the first team when I turned 19. And I was so happy for that. Obviously, it's every kid's dream to play professional soccer. And when that opportunity came, I was obviously super happy. And then I spent my time at TFC, which is an unforgettable time. Met some great people, great coaches, great players all around, just had a good time. And then I moved to Ottawa, same sort of thing. Great system, great coaches, great manager. Worked with Julian de Guzman and got to know him better and how he was as a general manager. And then now I'm back home and playing for York 9. Well, soon to be, as soon as this is over.
Yeah, well, yeah, unfortunately we have the whole pandemic going on right now. But before we get into a little bit of the struggle, let's talk a little bit about your career. So you said you played at TFC in Ottawa as well. Who would you say is the toughest player you've ever played against?
Toughest player I've ever played against? Well, Javinko definitely in training was tough to deal with. He's small, gets around corners quick. He's tough to get a handle on. And he's, you saw what he did in matches and stuff like that, and it was just elevated times 10 on the training pitch. So he's definitely up there. I would be harsh to not put him there. And I think surprisingly too, Benoit Cheroux, for any TFC fans, midfielder, he was just so clean on the ball. It looked like he wasn't trying at times and just sort of did his work, and it was hard to get near him, and he just kind of did everything with ease, and it was sort of really hard to deal with someone like that. You just couldn't get the ball off him. So I think those two for sure are the biggest standouts for me.
Very interesting. Yeah, I figured Jovinko would have probably been up there, especially considering his trajectory and what he did at Juve and whatnot. So let's get a little bit more into what we wanna talk about here. And the reason, again, we're doing this is so that people that watch these videos and they struggle with things mentally, if they're overcoming tough tragedies in their life or whatnot, they often feel isolated. They feel like they're alone. I know I've definitely gone through some things before. I first want to ask you is, what is one of the toughest things that you possibly had to deal with, either mentally or throughout your career? And how did you get through that? What kind of drove you to get by, and what was it first?
Well, it's hard to put one thing only, because if you've played sort of any, not even just professional, high-level sports, it's a telling task for you mentally, constantly, training and video sessions and getting training and games and whatnot, and not being able to go out and sleeping, and it takes its all toll. And But I think the biggest thing is like when you're traveling too, you're away from your family. It's a lot of time with the guys on your team. It's a lot of the time to reflect and certain things, and you have a lot of time that to yourself that many people may not have, and it's a tough time. It could be really tough because you miss certain things. You can miss birthdays, you can miss anniversaries, whatever it may be, passing of someone if you're on the road. It's there's a lot of things that can come into play, so it's hard to say one thing is the toughest. Another thing I'd say is playing, right? Playing up and down. If you're on the bench, if you're on the 18 or out of the roster, it's sort of a mental roller coaster with that too, because you can't really sort of do anything about that. It's more about up to the manager and see what he's determining. I think it's hard to label one thing, but there are definitely many parts of the playing professional sport that aren't easy, and not necessarily many people talk about and sort of get to shed that light on.
For sure. Yeah, I guess I think to highlight that a little bit, being away from your family is difficult. I mean, I'm away from my family right now. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. So being away from them is definitely tough. And obviously you look at it, I think the first person people generally prioritize when they do something is themselves, because obviously you got to take care. If everyone took care of themselves, I guess that'd be one way of moving this world forward in a better way. But when you do that, often it can come off as selfish. It can come off as, just thinking like the world revolves around you, but it's not like that. And some people won't understand it unless they've lived it. And that can affect the way that your family sees you and the way you see them.
Absolutely.
It's definitely tough. I mean, especially the whole mindset of saying, no, this is going to be the best and the best thing for me and the best thing for our family. We're going to see this as time progresses. Off the pitch, is there anything that you have ever gone through, not necessarily a tragedy, but just one sort of way of thinking that kind of maybe brought you down in your craft? Is there anything along those lines?
Brought me down in my craft, maybe. I think sort of the only thing that can really come to mind is my sister got sick. She had lymphoma, and that was sort of a big, somewhat of a turning point for me, because then it not only to put into perspective of soccer, is short, but life in general could be short. Obviously she made a full recovery, thank God, but at the time you never knew, right? So, and I was away at preseason when she had started her treatment, and my parents tried to keep me as little as involved, but I think that was a big point in my life that I can look back on and definitely reflect on, because when she was going through her stuff, it was sort of put into perspective how much it sort of meant to her about having people around, and it was tough for me not to be there. So I think that's one thing, and my performance may have been hindered here and there in training sessions or in matches, but it's hard to say exactly how much it affected me, but I was definitely thinking about it constantly through the day, and it's something that never left my mind, and it was definitely hard to deal with at the time, for sure.
See, and that's interesting, because, and it's not necessarily that it'll affect your performance. I mean, I've shared a pitch with you, and I know you're a really, really good soccer player. I mean, obviously you're at the professional level, that's without a doubt. And sometimes you won't, I don't even think it'll affect your performance, but there's a struggle that you need to go through in your mind before you get to the pitch. And you can be playing even your best game, but no one knows what happens before that. You may read a headline about a footballer or about an athlete that says so-and-so is going through this, but no one ever says, like, you don't really talk about it. So it just seems like a headline. And when you get into it, you start realizing, like, wow, this person actually, he went through hell just to get through where he is, right? And there's so many people dealing with, obviously now with the pandemic going on, they're dealing with, sicknesses, deaths, so many concerns. So it's interesting how you dealt with this and how you're still going strong, and thank God she's okay, obviously. And
of course.
Wow, that's tough. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, that was different. No, yeah, it was a tough time, but obviously we got through it. But these are the things where you sort of rely on the people around you, and your teammates can even play a big part with helping you get through some of the stuff. And obviously you may not want to televise all your things or broadcast all your things to everyone, but there are a few people that you do and can definitely help you through times like that, for sure.
Yeah, and you know what? When I always talk with my partner, I always say to her, like, you're gonna judge yourself more when you're in a bad situation and how you get out of that versus when everything's good. When everything's good, we can all be happy-go-lucky, right? But when everything is bad, how are you?
Absolutely, yeah.
What's your character in that kind of moment, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So going back to like a more objective question, I would ask you, do you think life is difficult?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I don't think there's any easy part of it. So yeah, I'd say for sure.
Life is
For
difficult.
sure.
And are you generally a happy person? Do you consider yourself an optimistic, happy person?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sure, there are times just like everyone, and I would be sort of inhuman if I said there were times where I wasn't. But yeah, yeah. In general, I'm always happy. I'm always down to have a good time. If people know me, I'm always joking around, especially in the team environment. I love it, and that's sort of how I grew up, and I'll always love that. But yeah, no, I think it's really hard. It's not easy at all, and I'm the type of guy who always tries to find the better in things that or I'd like to see myself as that. So yeah, it's not easy.
You are optimistic overall, and I guess what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get to here is, so you said that you're always in a good mood and your teammates see it, and I like to think I am
Mm-hmm.
as well. But recently, or in the last 5 years, to say, I always try to, when I have a conversation with someone, dive down into the more questions of like existentialism, and I dealt with a lot in my own life when I would have like attacks in the middle of the night of just dealing with the fact of like non-existence. It was scary, but eventually what got me
Mm-hmm.
through that was seeking a better version of myself. That often traveling helped me out a lot with that, and realizing
Mm-hmm.
that some things are out of your control, and then you reach this point of like almost an enlightened happiness, which becomes a state where you proactively think to do that, and it's not just little moments of joy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's it's a I'm sure it was a tough thing for you to come across or sort of learn to deal with those kind of things, right? And sort of find your way of thinking, and it's probably much easier said than done, right? I'm sure when you were going through that time, it wasn't easy at all. I mean, for example, and I can sort of I've struggled with certain things in the game where it's in that time you don't think it's ever going to end, right? Even there's certain things you don't think it's ever going to end, but coming out of that is what makes you stronger, and obviously you're a testament to that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, but like,
No,
yeah,
of course.
yeah, that's sorry, just thinking a little bit about it. Um,
Yeah.
and what are some things that maybe other people could use that you use? What are there any models you use in your life, or any phrases you could repeat to yourself that remind you, like someone might have it worse, or that gets you through things?
I don't necessarily have one or just anything. I just sort of try to take any situation that comes with me with a grain of salt, I guess, and take it step by step and sort of see how things play out. But not one in particular, to be honest. So probably not the best for that question.
Okay, I see. No, no problem.
Hmm.
Here's another one for you. Now that we've kind
Hmm.
of gotten the deeper stuff. What about regret? What do you think about regret? Do you live with it? Have you lived with it before in the past?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think everyone has some sort of that in them and innately in them or whatever they do. I think it's a part of us, and I think it's a part of everyone. But it's learning to deal with the things that you may regret and then turning them into a positive. Because if you dwell on those things, then that can be a major problem, right? That's where things become problematic for you. And no matter what it is, whether it be professional sports or the business sense or family or whatever, I think it's when you regret something, it's okay, but as long as you learn from it and see what the positives were from it and move on from that, as opposed to dwelling on it and making it uh, sort of an anchor that's keeping you down in life. I think that's one thing where that's where it can become a real problem for whatever you may be doing and life in general for you. So definitely live with it. I know there are certain things that I will definitely regret in my life that I've done, but it's sort of finding that peace or finding that sense of that's